Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. I am guest designing for Scrapping for Less using their January Flavor of the Month card kit. Here's just a quick peek at everything that is included in the card kit, and I do have an unboxing video which I will link in the description box if you want to see a little more detail. I just decided to do them separately for those that would just rather watch the card making process. Every month, Scrapping for Less provides 4 different card sketches for inspiration. For my cards, I will be using all of those sketches. So for card number 1, I'm using Operation Write Home sketch number 150. And this paper is from collection number 1. Whenever I use a busier pattern paper, like this blue piece with all of the words and the coffee cups, I like to try to bring in another pattern paper that's not quite so busy, like this polka dot for the background. I also like to use a lot of solid colored cardstock for matted layers. So this brown cardstock is actually just from my craft room. Even when using card sketches, you don't always have to follow the sketch exactly. So instead of that little sentiment bar by the oval, I'm actually putting a piece of ribbon across the whole card, and then my sentiment's going to be on this oval ephemera that comes in the kit. And then I'm just going to pop that right up, and I decided it didn't need any more layers just because it already has that nice white border around it. And then I included one of the little coffee cup ephemera as well, adding some foam dimensional tape to that. And then just a final touch, I'm going to use a few of the sequins and just put them in that upper right-hand corner. And for adhering the sequins, I'm just using Ranger's Multi-Medium Matte. And then I decided to use Nuvo's Crystal Glaze to the whipped cream in the coffee cup. And it comes out kind of fast, so I just have a scrap piece of paper to just kind of blend it all around. And that is card number 1. For card number 2, I'm using Mojo Monday sketch number 359. And the paper is still from collection number 1. And this is made by Scrapping for Less. And this time I'm repeating some of the same pattern paper from the previous card. So I have that polka dot paper for the background and then some more of this striped paper for this smaller rectangular piece. And then I also included this tan paper with all the little coffee cups and the coffee beans. And then for the ribbon across, I'm going to use another piece of this sheer polka dot ribbon. And I just adhere that in place using a piece of score tape. And I'll just tuck the ends behind the card front and hold that in place with some more score tape. And then I'll go ahead and put lots of adhesive on the back of that card front and adhere it to a card base. And I did have a little extra of the card base showing, so I just went ahead and trimmed that off. And then I cut out a stitch circle die cut, and then also stamped and colored one of the images from the Scrapping for Less stamp set. So it's this cute little coffee cup with the little heart on there, and just used the sentiment coffee, coffee, coffee. And I didn't show my coloring because I'm not very fancy at coloring. I keep it pretty simple. So you can definitely learn far more about coloring from other people. So then I used one of the wood icons from collection number 2 because I thought it would be perfect for that little flower embellishment on the sketch. And then once again, another little touch, I'm going to use some of the sequins and just put them in that upper right-hand corner. And I chose the blue because it really pulls out the rest of the blues on the card. So that is card number 2. For card number 3, I did use a sketch that was not included from Scrapping for Less. So this is MFT sketch number 395. It is kind of one of my favorites right now, so I have been using it quite often. So I'm still using some brown cardstock that didn't come in the kit. And just to save on paper, I went ahead and cut out that matted brown circle die out of the background matted paper. It's always nice to do that, especially if you're low on a specific cardstock color. So I just use a polka dot paper for the background and then the coffee beans for that featured circle image, some more of that stripe paper, and then I pulled out some more of the ephemera with this sentiment on there. Good days start with coffee. And I just put that on some foam tape in the center. And then I'll just finish off the card with an assortment of the sequins. So overall, this card is pretty quick and simple, but I like it because it has just some nice features to it and then a little bit of shine from the sequins. So I chose a mix of colors and a mix of sizes of the sequins this time, putting 3 in the lower corner and 2 in the upper corner. And that is card number 3. So now moving on to card number 4. So this time I'm using the MFT sketch number 161, and now I've moved on to the paper collection number 2. So I love the bright and cheerful colors in this collection, especially with the pink and the turquoise. And then once again, I'm using some more of this dark brown cardstock. I just like the contrast that it adds to all of the pattern paper, and then it just really helps separate all the busyness of the papers. But I'm just making sure my batter is nice and straight, and I just used some brown cardstock with a stitch circle die. And then for the image, this is the Newton's Nook, and it's that adorable kitty hanging out of the donut. Now, I didn't color this image. My niece was over, and she really wanted to color it, so I went ahead and let her color it, and she just made sure to match it to the pattern paper. But didn't she do a great job? This stamped image works just great with this card sketch because it fits into this rectangle element just perfectly. So now I'm just going to put that card front onto a card base. And then I do like to add just that thin strip of the pattern paper that you probably wouldn't use otherwise, but I like to put it on the inside of the card just for a little extra detail. So once again, I pulled out the sequins, and I'm just kind of adding a few around the little kitty there. And then one final touch, I pulled out some white Nuvo drops, and I decided to put 3 of them just underneath the image. So I always test them out first because sometimes you get that air bubble and then it makes a disaster on your card. And I decided not to add a sentiment to the front of the card, so I did go ahead and stamp one on the inside instead. And I did test it out first, especially because it was the first time I'd ever inked it up. So that is card number 4. So now I'm on to card number 5. So the sketch is Scrapbook and Card Spring 2016 sketch number 4. So this is an example where I really didn't follow the sketch, and I used it more as some inspiration. So the sketch was designed as a horizontal sketch, but I did use it vertically instead. So I do still have these 2 circle elements, but I cut out a smaller and a larger one, and I put them in the adjacent corners. So I used a stitch die, so it still adds some nice detail. Then I just flipped over the paper to cut off the excess, kind of that overhang, and then I'll adhere that on to that matted layer. So again, I'm still using some more of this brown paper. And then for this sentiment box, I'm using the whipped cream cardstock that comes in the kit, but I decided to need just another color to pop it up, so I just pulled out a piece of some turquoise. It's like a scrap of cardstock that I had in my room. And then I decided to use the same sentiment as the previous card, Life is Better with Sprinkles. So I'm just putting that on the lower part of that sentiment box. And I realized I didn't have that brown paper very straight, so I just did another trim on that. And then this time for the images, I'm going to use some of the stickers that are included. So these are just some cheerful little cinnamon buns and donuts that have little sprinkles all over them. Now I'll go ahead and put that card front onto a card base. And also add that little piece of pattern paper just to the inside of the card. And then I'm just using some foam dimensional tape to pop up that sentiment box. And then I pulled out all of the little sequins again, and I'm just going to use an assortment this time. So I have 3 of the brown ones that I'm putting in that upper right-hand corner. And then all around the little stickers and the sentiment, I'm just going to add some of these pink sequins. So I just put down the glue first, and then just putting all of the little sequins in place. It adds a real nice shine to it. And that is card number 5. So now I'm on to card number 6. So I'm going back to the Operation Write Home sketch number 150 again. And for the paper collection, I have now moved on to collection number 3. So again, I have that cutout of the background matted paper. I have an oval cutout there just to save on cardstock again. And for the background, I used just some craft cardstock that's included in the kit. Still using some more of this brown cardstock for the layering though. And I went and stamped and colored up this sweet little image from La La Land. This is a little mini Marcy with a little coffee cup. And then before I add any more embellishments to the card, I went ahead and adhered that card front onto the card base and also added the little pattern paper strip to the inside. And since that strip with the polka dots and the coffee cups has a little bit of thickness to it, I did add just some of the thin foam dimensional tape on the upper half of that oval, just so it was nice and flat on the card. Now I'm going to go ahead and stamp a sentiment. This one is Let's Do Coffee. And I'm just going to cut a real thin piece and then cut a little banner off of the side there. And I know there are lots of banner dies available, but I usually just cut my own. So again, I'm add a little bit of dimension to the back of that just so it's nice and even on the card. And I realized I hadn't added any little banners to the upper corners yet, and that's kind of my trademark. So I did go ahead and cut out one, which is some brown cardstock, to add to that upper right-hand corner. And then one final touch, I did pull out some more of these little blue sequins, and I'm just going to put 3 of them in the bottom right-hand corner. And that is card number 6. So now we're on to card number 7. So again, I'm using sketch number 161 from MFT. You can see I have a scallop circle cut out of that background matted paper. So for this card, I'm using black cardstock for all the matting. I like how it adds a lot of contrast. So the papers in collection number 3 are definitely on the busier side. So for this little banner strip, I did just use some of the blue cardstock that's included in the kit to just sort of tone down some of that busyness. So I'm going to add that pattern paper to the inside of the card, and then I went ahead and cut out a stitched circle die cut along with one of these scallop circle die cuts for that matted layer. And then I'm using some of these little wood icons. This little coffee cup, and then the little sentiment that says coffee time. So I'm just going to add those to that circle using some of the adhesive. And then I'll use some of the sequins and just add a few of them around the image there. I used some of the yellow and some of the blue sequins because it matched really nicely with the pattern paper. And after I get all of those adhered down, I decided to pull out some glitter Nuvo drops, and then I added it to the heart on the little coffee cup. So once it dries, it'll have this really pretty blue glitter. And again, I'm just using a scrap piece of paper to kind of spread it around and then clean up any of the little extra bits. So that is card number 7. So now I'm on to card number 8. So again, I'm using MFT sketch number 161. And I am also on to collection number 4 of the paper. So this is Echo Park's Coffee Paper Collection. So I'm using this pink polka dot paper for the background, and then one of the busier designs for this rectangular piece. And then this green is just some of the back side of one of the pattern papers. But again, I don't want too many busy patterns, so it's nice to have just a solid color for some of the parts. And then I used one of the cut aparts that's included in the kit. So these are 3 by 4 inches. So I did trim it down just a little bit. I couldn't trim it down a lot because it goes right to the edge. And then I added some black cardstock for all of the matted layers. So overall, this card is fairly simple, nice and quick, but I did want to add just a little bit of shine. So the sequin mix that comes in collection number 4 has these tiny little flowers, and they have almost an iridescent look to them. So I'm just gluing them randomly all over this sentiment cut apart piece. And I like how it adds a lot of sparkle. And if you've never used this little jewel picker tool, it's really handy for picking up those tiny little parts. So that is card number 8. So now I'm on to card number 9. So again, I'm using Mojo Monday sketch number 359. And again, you can also see that cut out from the back of my matted layer. So you know there'll be a little scallop circle later on. So I'm still using collection number 4 for the paper. And for that pink piece with the little drinks on there, this is actually the back side of one of the cut aparts. And instead of ribbon, I just used a thin piece of black cardstock to go across the card. So I'm going to go ahead and put my card front onto a card base. So I've already gone ahead and stamped and colored up this sweet little girl from Greeting Farm, and also the sentiment, and used a circle die and a scallop die to cut those out. And for coloring, I do use Copic markers. Even though I don't color very often, I really like how they're nice and smooth when you color. So after I adhere the image and the sentiment, I'm just going to do that final touch with the sequins in the upper right-hand corner. So that is card number 9. And now I'm on to card number 10. So I really wanted to use this fun embossing folder that comes in the Banana Split collection. So it just has these donuts on the top and then the big sentiment in the center that says, "Do not worry." So I embossed the whole thing on some craft cardstock, and then I went and embossed the whole thing using some of the pink cardstock. And these are both colors that are included in the kit. So I didn't show this step, but I cut out just like the frosting part of all of the donuts with the pink. And now I'm going to go ahead and glue all of those back on top of the craft cardstock. And then I just flip it over and cut off all of the little extra parts that are hanging over the edge. So this took a little bit of time, but I think this turned out really cute. So I'm just going to go ahead and layer that onto some dark brown cardstock and then also onto the card base. And I was trying to figure out if I wanted to have a little bit of the white card base showing or just the brown. And I did decide to use some of the white card base. And since this is a full embossed image, I do use a lot of adhesive on the back because I want to make sure it stays put on the card. So now I have that all ready onto the card base. And now I pull out lots of fun glitter and shine. So first I'm going to use a Wink of Stella clear glitter pen, and I'm just going over all of the letters on the sentiment. So it'll have a nice pretty glitter. And then once I'm done with that, I pulled out some glossy accents and I'm just going over top all of those letters again. So for one, it'll seal in that glitter and it's going to add some really nice shine. And I did speed this part up quite a bit, so I did take way longer and made sure I wasn't getting it all over the place. So then when I'm done with the glossy accents, I decided to add some of the Nuvo glitter. This is the white blizzard color. I'm putting it on all of the frosting on the donuts. So it basically looks like a really pretty glitter frosting all over the place. So again, this is sped up quite a bit. I don't actually go this fast when I put it on. But I love how this turned out. I love the pink and the brown together, and that glossy accent really makes the sentiment just pop. But I still needed a little more shine, so I pulled out one of the little sequin mixes, and I'm just putting little drops of glue all around the sentiment. And I'm just using the jewel picker to place all of those sequins down. And when I did this, none of the Nuvo or the glossy accents were dry yet. So I was trying to be really careful not to accidentally stick my finger in there and smudge it. And I was kind of surprised that I didn't. But I love how this card turned out. Fairly simple. It did take a little bit more time with all of the extra glitter and glossy accents. But I really love how it turned out. And I really wanted to make sure it had a nice balance of sequins. And I had noticed that there were way more on the right-hand side of the card versus the left hand. So I'm just adding a few more onto the left-hand side of the card. So that is card number 10. So now here's a quick recap of all 10 cards I made using Scrapping for Less January Flavor of the Month card kit. And this is the Perk Up and Start the New Year card kit. So the kit is now available, but there are limited quantities. So if you're interested in picking up one, I suggest you go hurry up and grab it. I will provide a link to the kit in the description box below. I really enjoyed using the kit. If you enjoyed my video, please subscribe and don't forget to hit the thumbs up. I always appreciate the support. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.